And one of the biggest mistakes that I would try to make in ministry
Mhm.
was trying to be like the people that I was trying to minister to. And I'm gonna tell you that if you're trying to be something or someone that you're not, I don't care what age group it is,
Mhm.
youth, adults, whatever, people will see right through that.
You are now in the presence of a
Thanks for tuning in to the Reformationist Podcast, a place where we have tough conversations about ministry, biblical truth, and the things they never told you in Bible college. Grab a cup of coffee and enjoy the show.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Reformationist Podcast. I've got an exciting episode today. I was able to get scheduled my friend, Pastor Bubba, the guy who runs the Southern Roots Coffee Company, our official coffee here at the Reformationist Podcast. If you haven't tried them out, go check them out. Some of the best coffee me and my wife have had in a long time. Like I said in the little ad that you'll see later on, man, like we've been drinking your coffee longer than we knew it was your coffee. So we've had
Right.
some experience with it. But Pastor Bubba, welcome on the show. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me, PJ. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, man. We're gonna have a great conversation today. But let's go over some ground rules. I go over these every episode, and they're simple. They're not extreme. They're not anything crazy. They're not religious. They're not. They're just simple rules to keep the podcast
Mhm.
flowing. Rule number one, and the most important because it's coffee with pastors, is grab a cup of coffee. We got that working today. Um,
That's right.
that's always important. That's the most important part. Whether we're having a regular meeting or just hey getting together as friends, coffee is a must.
That's it, man. Every day, every day, every day, all day. I think I cut my arm the other day and coffee flowed out. So
Rule number two. This is to me one of the most important parts. You're the guest. You're the guest of honor for the show. You're the person we brought on to have this conversation. You're um, contributing most to the conversation. And the people that are checking in are most likely checking in to see you and hear what you have to say. So be prepared to do
no
most of the
no pressure,
talking.
right? No pressure, right?
Be prepared to do most of the talking. I'll throw in something here or there, or maybe insert an opinion here or there, straight out of the book of opinions. Um, but you're the reason people are tuning in. You're the topic bearer. Rule number three, while it's super important to be real and honest through everything we talk about, we have to remember that this podcast will reach people in ministry, people in lay ministry, people looking to get involved into full-time ministry, and lay people that aren't involved in ministry that just want to check us out and see what we're talking about. So we have to remember that we keep no negativity, no gossip, um, and remember it's not a therapy session. We can talk about things if we have a specific example we want to talk about, we can bring that up. Just try and leave names or churches or associations
Yep,
out of it. Just hey, I knew a guy one time that did
sure.
this, and we talk about it. I'm okay
Right.
with that. And rule number four, another important rule: if a subject is too difficult to talk about, don't commit to it. Example: don't talk about divorce in ministry if you have open wounds. Because we talk a
Mm.
wide range of topics. If we're talking about, I had a conversation last year with a pastor, and we talked about being wounded by the church, being wounded in the church, dealing with conflict and resolution. And there was a lot of stuff there that could have been a sore topic for somebody. But if it's too sore of a topic, talking about authenticity, I don't think we'll venture that way. But you never know the way the conversation could be led.
Yeah.
Um, With that being said, give us a quick elevator intro to you, who you are, what you do, how long you've been in ministry, kind of thing. And then we'll jump into icebreakers.
Yeah, I am Bubba Warren, and I am lead pastor at Connect Church in Alexandria, Louisiana. We've been here over 4 years now. September will be 5, and I'm telling you, those years fly by more and more the older we get, PJ, for sure. And just excited to be here today. I think that I'm 44 years old, and I throw that in for one reason is that people say that in your 40s is when you get into the prime of your ministry. And for me, I feel like right now, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm in my prime, but I feel like I am learning probably more about ministry than the other 20 years that I've been in ministry. And just so many. Um, Revelations are beginning to come. In fact, when you and I first started talking about doing this podcast, I had a different subject in mind. And whenever you said, "Hey, man, let's do this," I'm like, "Okay, but I'm changing the subject." That's more than an elevator intro. I apologize for that. But just to kind of give you that intro, there is that I've been here in Alexandria about 5 years now, and I just got some things on my heart that the Lord has been stirring that I'm excited to share this morning.
Awesome. Awesome. We're excited to get into that. But first, let's do a quick icebreaker. Icebreakers are usually fun. I've done a bunch of different ones. But today's icebreaker is going to be unique because me and you, first time we met, we were doing a live draft for fantasy football.
Yep.
So with that being said, I also, as being friends on social media, found out that we both enjoy professional wrestling. And our families enjoy, professional wrestling. In our house, Friday night, WWE SmackDown, man, we jump on and we watch family night. It's SmackDown, it's family night. We have fun. But with fantasy sports and wrestling combined, I just wanted to show off
Mm-hmm.
my fantasy pro wrestling league that I was a
Oh
part of for
man,
a few years. And
that's pretty sweet.
the league fell apart and I was the champion at the time, so I get to keep this pretty little belt forever. But I just wanted to
Nice.
talk about your enjoyment in fantasy sports or wrestling. Like, talk a little bit about that. Tell me how long you've been a fan of sports, wrestling, things like that, and
Yeah, man.
your
So
favorite thing about it, favorite moment.
yeah,
How about that?
yeah. So it was what's kind of funny too is that I meet so many people, like so many people that sometimes I forget how we met. And like, oh man, Peter, PJ, man, like yeah. Then I'm going, how did we even met? How did we even meet? I was like, I've seen you around 1,000 times. We talk all the time. We're on social media. My mind went blank as to how we met. And then when you mentioned fantasy football, I'm like, oh yeah, that's where we met at. So here's the crazy part about that. If you remember those live drafts, I would drive to Youngsville because I just like being with friends. And my son Max would always come with me. Do you remember that?
Yeah, yeah.
So Max would come with me, and we was right next door today. There's a coffee bus that we're opening up this morning, and so Max and I were over there, and I said, "Hey, I'm doing a podcast with Pastor PJ today," and he goes, "Hold on, I think I know him. Oh, he's a wrestling fan." so, so like out of every sport or whatever that wrestling almost becomes a fraternity of brothers because it's just something different about it. I don't know what it is. um I've done fantasy football for years.
Yeah,
Man, since before I've been married 17 years, so probably 20 or more years I've been doing fantasy football. And um we used to do fantasy football back in the day before it was all online.
yeah.
And you would get together and you'd have these draft boards with paper and you'd make your draft picks and people would have to write it down. And then you had one guy out of the whole league that you had to trust to take to do the scores properly. And then you have to wait till you get an email every week to find out who won the game. And now it's right there at your fingertips. And
Right.
it's just so much fun. There's so many different avenues of fantasy football, but to do it in the church world has just been so fantastic
Yeah.
because it's just something else that people can bond upon. Now, if you're like me, and most people are, you have a favorite football team.
Mhm.
And when you're drafting players from other teams, it makes you that much more invested in other football games that you typically wouldn't watch. So
Yeah.
that's been one of the fun things about it. I have a deeper love for NFL football than anything else. And that started since I was just 3 or 4 years old. My grandfather used to watch Saints football, and I used to watch that with him. So from 3, 4 years old, man, I've been watching football, and it's just it's a love that I have. I think also being in ministry too, like having just that something after church to come home to like, man, I know I'm going home to watch a football game, and
Right.
it can kind of be a break in your day or just that release from ministry, and it's been a ton of fun. Now, I never knew, I was telling you this a little bit earlier, that there was a such thing as fantasy wrestling.
Mhm.
And that's because there was no such thing. You came up with this, didn't you?
I saw a few people online that had leagues, and I was like, man, we can do
Okay.
this. And you just
Yeah.
like fantasy football, you attach points to certain things. I did it where it was all like you've got WWE, you've got AEW, Impact, New Japan, all these
Mhm.
different. You pick so many people from each league, and then you use them. That's who
Yeah.
your guys are that week, and that's how you accumulate points. So if your guy's not on TV that week,
Man.
you don't get any points. So I was playing in a league with guys
Oh, man.
that were picking guys that really weren't active as much anymore. And it was like, hey, your guys aren't really on TV much. I mean, they're in the pool, but they're not on TV as much. They're like part-timers. But I watched
Yeah.
so much of it and I was so involved that I was picking everybody I knew was going to be on TV. I was following storylines. But you do different seasons, like you have WrestleMania season, you have SummerSlam season, you have Royal Rumble season. So you accumulate weeks and you accumulate points. And
Oh, okay.
then
Okay.
at the end, the champion's crowned. And we all chipped in and bought the
Oh,
belt,
cool.
like 20 bucks a person, chipped in and bought the belt.
Mhm.
And the winner gets to hold that belt for the next season. So then,
Oh, cool.
and like the final show, like if it's WrestleMania season, WrestleMania is your
Mhm.
final show for that season. So at the end of
Oh, gotcha.
WrestleMania, all the points are accumulated. It was like old school, like you said, old school fantasy football. I had
Mhm.
a notebook and I wrote everything down in a notebook. And I had a couple spreadsheets on like the Google Docs and the other thing.
Yeah.
And I shared it with everybody in the league so they can go and check their points real time as the show's ended. But man, it
Okay.
was a lot of work. I probably couldn't do it now, but it was a lot of fun, and it lasted about a
Yeah.
year and a half, 2 years, and I was champion for the majority of the time. But it
And
was
now you
fun.
get to retire as champion.
Yep, get to retire that belt too. Put it with my
I'll
other
wait till
belts
the
that I have.
I'll wait till the app comes out, then I'll join. There's no way I can keep up with all that, man.
You'd think they would because there's so many wrestling fans, but I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Wrestling fans, like you said, it's definitely a brotherhood, and a lot of wrestling fans out there are a different breed of human being.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know,
for sure.
especially
And if you don't believe that, go to a live show, right?
absolutely. Go to a live show from one of the big companies and go to some indie shows, like the little small town shows. You go to some indie shows,
Man,
you run
they
into
are
some
so
stuff,
fun. They are so
but
fun too. Like anybody watching this, like I'm not here to promote wrestling. I understand that.
right,
But if there's like this small indie show and you're like, oh, it's gonna be cheesy, you are absolutely correct. It will be cheesy, but it is one of the
right.
best times you will ever have. With
I
about
mean,
150 to 300 people, you get involved like you can never get involved at a WWE show. It's so
right,
fun.
right. I mean, even like, you talk about it's cheesy. Wrestling is cheesy. You had guys
Yeah,
like
exactly.
we were supposed to believe guys like the Big Boss Man were a real cop from Cobb County, Georgia, and he was going to lock you up in prison, or the Undertaker really came out of the grave. There's only one person, two people that we know that did that: Lazarus, because Jesus told him, and Jesus himself. Otherwise, there ain't no
That's
dead
right.
man walking in the ring. Sorry about your luck. He's just a guy playing a character. But that's what makes it
Uh,
fun, you know.
that's right. That's right.
Man, wrestling. Gotta love
Characters
wrestling.
and story, man. It's yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Mm.
Icebreaker. That was a good icebreaker. I enjoyed that one. All right. So today we're going to have a great conversation on authenticity. Um, you know, as a young pastor myself, new to pastoral ministry, being involved in ministry for at least 10 years now, but like pastoral where I'm actually credentialed, preaching, leading a church. Um, Authenticity is something important, especially for this upcoming generation. The teens and the young adults, they
Yeah.
want authenticity. They're tired of seeing all the fake and fabricated stuff that's out there, and there's a lot of it in the church and outside of
Mhm.
the church. They want
Yeah.
realness.
Yeah.
So as we lead into that, give us a little bit. We talked a little bit about who you are and where you are, but give us a little bit about your background and what for lack of a better way of saying it, what qualifies you to talk about this subject?
Yeah, sure, man. So I grew up in the church, and it was a Mennonite church, which is very rare in Louisiana. There's not many Mennonite churches in this area at all. It was a Mennonite church when I was just 16 years old, I believe it was. The Lord had really given me vision of breaking down denominational walls. So at 18 years old and 20 years old, I am now a youth pastor leading youth at the Mennonite church. But because of the vision of breaking denominational walls, I started getting involved with other denominations as well. There was a time in our youth ministry where we had every church in the community come into our youth group. So that was us, the Mennonites, the Assembly of God, the Catholic Church, and there was a Baptist church. People would say, "What denomination are you?" I'd say, "I'm an Assembly of Baptist." and uh, but and now I'm an Assembly of God pastor, and that's kind of what the Lord used to get me to where I am today. Um, but all that to say, I've been in ministry for a long time. I've been in ministry, leading ministry since 1998, and that alone is not what qualifies me to do this. It's those hard lessons that you learn along the way that qualify you to be able to speak on this. It's all the mistakes that I made. And one of the biggest mistakes that I would try to make in ministry was trying to be like the people that I was trying to minister to. And I'm gonna tell you that if you're trying to be something or someone that you're not, I don't care what age group it is,
Mhm.
youth, adults, whatever, people will see right through that. They don't want you to be like them. They want to know that you really are genuinely concerned about them. They want to know that you really do care about their spiritual lives, their personal lives, their families. Um, so in my years of ministry, as I've grown in this, I was almost 40 years old still as a youth pastor, and people would say, "Man, how do you connect with youth when you're so much older than them?" And I'm like, "It's simple. You just be yourself
Yeah.
and you show them that you really care about them." That's the only connection that people really want, honestly. I don't have to dress like them. I don't have to talk like them. I don't have to whatever. People just want to know that you care. Like you cannot point people to Jesus if you don't care about them because it comes across as superficial, and it's probably true.
Right. Right. So you mean
Mm.
when you were a youth pastor, you weren't like wearing skinny jeans and Jordans?
Man, let me tell you, I actually wrote that in my notes. I never had to wear skinny jeans.
I
And look, if that was and that's part of what I'm talking about. If that was my style, it's one thing.
Right.
But if I put on a pair of skinny jeans just to try to relate to them, people see right through that, man.
Yep. Yep.
Like you got to be yourself, man.
That's like out here in the little country town we're at here, I wear my jacket almost every Sunday. And
Hmm.
the people in the congregation, they've gotten used to me, they've gotten to know me. And like, you don't have to wear that jacket every Sunday. I'm like, I know I don't have to, but that's me. That's who I am. Like
Yeah, yeah,
you dress to impress, not so much, but dress to be comfortable, to be who you are. Like,
right,
like
right.
if you wanted to
Yeah,
see me before I became a pastor, when I was back in the days living my old lifestyle, like it was common for me to wear a three-piece suit with my hair slicked back and some dark glasses
yeah,
on. Hey, yo, how you doing, guy? What's going on? Like, so for me, wearing a jacket is simple. Like I wear a jacket. I'll put a t-shirt on under it and jeans and a jacket. I'm not like full suit dress, but like again,
right.
authenticity, and
Yep, yep.
wardrobe is is a part of authenticity.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So we just had hired new children's pastors here at our
I
church,
saw that.
and the first couple times they came to visit, I'm in flannel shirts, jeans, and a boots, and that's how I preach. And they
Yeah.
asked me that question. They said, "Hey, do you?" And most of our church is kind of just dressing very casual as well. And they asked me, they said, "Do you encourage people to dress casual?" I said, "No, I encourage people to be themselves." I
Yeah.
said, "You're going to see some people who are dressed up really nice, but that's them being themselves."
Yeah,
And that's what I really encourage here.
absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So you talked a little bit about, you've been involved in ministry for a long time. Um,
Just rub
did
it
you,
in. I'm getting old, man. I know what you mean.
did you, well, I made that mistake last episode. I said, I said to the person I was talking with, I said, man, you've been in ministry almost as long as I've been alive. And it was like, but there's only like, honestly, there's only a 10-year gap there. So it's not like I was 10 when you got involved and this person got involved in ministry. I wasn't trying to make them feel old. I was just saying, hey, amazing, incredible. Like, especially for newcomers like me, I'm a few years into full-time ministry. Like
Yeah.
that's an applause. Like, thank you for leading the charge and making a way
Yeah.
for the rest of us
Yeah.
to come through. But like I didn't mean it to be like, oh,
Yeah.
you're old, I just no, like I like the generals of the faith, the people who have been around and put work in and sown seed and done all that. Like
Right.
it matters, so that's the importance of this podcast. Like,
Absolutely.
the general topic
Yep.
of what I'm going to get into next, like, were you able to attend a regular Bible college, like a full-time university Bible college, or did you do it through like LawSom or one of the other opportunities that are out there?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked me that question because I started answering your first question and never finished. Forgot what we were talking about for a second. Yeah. So I'm kind of the guy who people recognize the call in me long before I ever recognized it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess you could say I ran from it. I didn't know I was running from it. If I would have recognized and received that call earlier in life, I would have done full-time seminary. But because by the time I was finally like, okay, Lord, this is what you want to do in my life, I was already married. I was already working a full-time job that I really didn't have time to go to a full-time seminary. So it was right about the time I started doing an online thing, Global University Berean School of the Bible,
Okay.
and I was about 3 classes in, of the 8 that were required at the time. I was about 3 classes in when LaSalle started. So I was able to get 3 classes in online, and then everything else was through, LaSalle. And if you're watching and you're not, if you're in a different denomination, LaSalle is our Louisiana district, school of ministry, which is a I don't know if you'd call it a seminary or not, but it's classes that prepare you for ministry. So I guess really it is a seminary, but it allows you to get your credentials as well. So I'm now an ordained minister, so mostly through LaSalle.
Awesome. Yeah, I never knew about all that. Where we were going first was a non-denominational affiliate of the Assemblies of God. So
Okay.
they never, it was like, you've got Bible college, you can go to Bible college, you can do this, you can do that. And it was never like, hey, these are the steps. This is what you have to do. So I found SAGU. So I
Yeah.
attended SAGU. And I always say,
Oh yeah, yeah,
if I
yeah.
would have known LawSom was an availability, I probably would have had my credentials long ago. And then even
Yeah.
more like Bridges,
Mhm.
Dr. Freeman with Bridges
Mhm.
Christian College. If I would have known about that when I started Christian college, I probably would have went that route and saved myself a lot of money. But yeah, so
Yeah.
it just goes to show, like, every conversation I have, everybody comes from a different background of ministry training. But the importance is that we
Yeah.
pursue that training and pursue the heart of God through that training. So you said you were working
Yeah. And mhm.
full time while you were
I was
in.
gonna say, and don't settle. Like yeah, I was doing I've done the LaSalle, but I'm also still considering like going through bridges and continuing that education that way as well.
Awesome. Awesome. So you said you were working while you were taking your classes and getting into ministry.
Yeah.
What did you do before?
So I was working for the only Fortune 500 company in Louisiana, or at least at the time, I worked for
Wow.
Entergy, the
Okay.
power company. I was there actually 15 years. The call of ministry was a sacrifice financially.
Mm-hmm.
Went from
Mm-hmm.
making like 80K 10 years ago to well, I won't tell you what to having to pull second jobs. We'll put it that way.
Right. Right.
But yeah, I spent 15 years at Entergy, and it was a extremely busy season of my life, PJ, because I was also doing LaSalle at that time. I was also a volunteer youth pastor at the time. I mean, I've got a little babies at home, and I'm writing sermons with babies on my lap just because time was so hard to come by at the
Oh,
time. But
come
you
on.
still wanting to be a dad, and still wanting to be a family man, and
Yeah.
still making the sacrifices that it takes to be in ministry.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a crazy season of my life.
Absolutely. I can vouch for that. I've got my two oldest, my son just turned 9. My middle daughter, she turned
Hmm.
7 a couple months ago, and then we have the 18-month-old running around, the miracle
Yeah,
baby running around. But hey,
that's awesome.
if God gives
Yeah,
them to us, we'll take them. We're not
that's
saying no.
right.
Whatever the Lord. I don't know if we could handle a family the size of Pastor Travis's family, our friend Pastor Travis.
Yeah.
But if the Lord wants to give us 9 or 10, I'll take it. Like whatever you give me.
Hmm. That's it. That's
It's
it,
a
man.
special blessing on your life to have that many kids. So your previous work experience, and this is one of those things I've learned myself with being a firefighter. The first few episodes I did the rules, the unwritten rules for firefighting that I got as a rookie
Yeah.
firefighter. And a lot of what I learned as a firefighter, a lot of what I learned as a general manager for a furniture warehouse, all the different things, all the different jobs have been work experience that helped me step into ministry. Like I stepped into ministry. I just turned 40. So we've been
Mm.
pastoring the church out here in Hayes for a little over a year now. So like 39 years old, I'm stepping into my first ministerial role, like full-time ministerial role.
Yeah.
Um, but work experience helped me. My age helped me.
Hmm.
This next question is more for the just turned 18, graduated high school, going straight to Bible college. You can finish at 20 with a degree to get your credentials and launch into ministry. You're not
Hmm.
getting work experience like some of us have gone through in life.
Yeah.
How would you say your work experience prior to ministry helped you in ministry?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the greatest things that work in the field for 15 years did for me as I stepped into full-time ministry is number one is it gave me an understanding of of a busy lifestyle as far as people working and maybe coming home on a Wednesday night and they're so exhausted so they don't come to church. Instead of getting angry with that person, I can be like, man, I've been there before. I understand. And that would be my number two is just that empathy of of what people outside of the church, um, outside of vocational ministry are experiencing. So in other words, I'm up on Sunday morning and I'm preaching on whatever, holiness. I now understand what it's like to leave church on Sunday morning and walk into a place that is not a godly place.
Right.
It just gives me that empathy of what people are dealing with in the real world versus Pastor Bubba sitting at a desk without outside influence telling everybody else, "Hey, the Bible says live like this."
Right.
Not that you're not trying, but there's so much influence in the world that's around you. I remember working. One of the things we did as power workers was take storm trips. 2012, case in point, we worked at Hurricane Sandy that went up the East Coast,
Yeah.
and we spent 2 weeks in Pennsylvania and a week in New York. So that was 21 days that I wasn't home, but around a lot of ungodliness. And these guys, man, they were just getting drunk every night. They were going to the strip clubs. Uh, the language was just filthy all the time. And
Yeah.
I wasn't in church at the time. Right? I'm out on a storm trip. I couldn't go to church. I didn't have my godly friends around me. And it's like in those moments, you really understand what it's like uh, to come to church on Sunday, hear a message, but then have to live it out when you walk outside those doors.
Right.
It also gave me the understanding that what I'm preaching, it's not that people don't hear it, it's not that people don't want to do it, but growth a lot of times is gradual.
Yeah.
And growth a lot of times is there's a transformation happening in me. So I'm not walking fully in it today, but I'm growing every single day.
Hmm.
And that's a lot of fun too, is to be able to sit back and watch people grow. But if you're a young minister, don't expect like a message that I preach today changes everybody instantly tomorrow.
Right.
You're planting seeds, you're allowing the Holy Spirit to grow people, and you get to watch people's lives be transformed. So when you're preaching something and you watch somebody do something tomorrow, don't get like so disappointed in them or angry with them. Pray for them.
Yeah.
Like let the Holy Spirit do the work because they're growing, but
Right.
it may not be a quick growth.
Awesome. It helps with the subject, the authenticity. You know, it helps you
Yeah.
create authenticity. And when I say create authenticity, I don't mean fabricate it, but like
Hmm.
your experiences in life create a real authenticity for others to grab onto.
Right.
So
Right.
so let's
Yeah, I
dive.
remember
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I remember one of those storm trips too. Um, all these guys are going to do this, they're going to do that, and they would invite me. Hey, we're going to the bar to drink, we're going to the strip
Yeah.
club, we're going here, and of course, I'd always decline. And at that time, our pastor at the church I was attending had just resigned, and I was filling the pulpit some here and there. So when we got back home, uh, and I guess kind of to clarify that a little bit is these were crews that they would put together, so you didn't know everybody beforehand.
Right.
So when I got back home, I was posting on Facebook, hey, I'm preaching at such and such church on Wednesday night if you'll come out or whatever. So now I'm back at work and I pull up on a job site and it was one of the guys that was on the storm trip with us. And he was up in the bucket truck and he kind of yells down. He said, "Hey, Grover," that's my real name, Grover. He goes, "Are you a preacher?" And I said, "Well, like I'm in ministry, I do some preaching." And he comes down from the bucket truck. And this is probably one of the greatest compliments you could ever be paid as a Christian. He comes down and he goes, "Man, when we were on that storm trip in Pennsylvania and New York, I knew that there was something different about you."
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just me once again being authentic to who I am in Christ
Right.
and not following the crowd.
Exactly. That's important. You know, you mentioned Sandy and being in New York. My brother, my oldest brother, he was living when he was alive, he after Sandy, he lost everything. And to tie it
Mm.
in to the wrestling stuff, he had the biggest collection of wrestling belts and memorabilia in his basement, and the storm flooded everything. He lost
Oh, wow.
all that stuff.
Mm.
Uh he passed away a year later from personal issues and stuff. But man, like
Um,
he lost all that stuff in Sandy. And like now, like the little connections,
man.
I always try and point out all the little connections that like, man,
Hmm.
you were on a crew working up on, to get them back online and everything. And I know people that were affected by that storm, like family members. So it's
Yeah.
like the small
Wow.
little stuff, But anyway,
Yeah, absolutely.
so that we talked a little bit about authenticity, but let's dive into it. Um,
Mhm.
the next question, how did this topic become real for you? What was the turning point, or have you always felt an importance in authenticity? Has it always been part of you, or was it something that had to develop over time and you realized, wow, I just need to be authentic and that's it. I need to stop trying to
Yeah.
be who I'm not.
Yeah. So I think it's been important to me for a long time. And I think I'm just now getting to the place where I'm putting into words and recognizing exactly what it is, if that makes sense. I know this is going to be a shock to all of the viewers, but I've never been the cool guy. so, so for me, especially being in youth ministry, I mean, look, teenagers are judgmental, man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was always me trying to, I think kind of what I was saying in the introduction, trying to figure out how can what do I have to do for them to think that I'm cool so that I can preach to them.
Yeah.
And it was like, you try to do this and you try to listen to what they listen to and you try to dress like they dress and you try to talk like they talk, and that just wasn't real and there was no connection. And it was like when that light bulb kind of goes off, like I'm trying to be somebody that I'm not, and it's like I'm just going to be myself. And then they start connecting to uncool Bubba, and it's like, wait, all I got to do is be myself. I'll tell you this quick little story is that I joke around a lot, I goof off a lot, I make jokes all the time. And there was a lady in our old church, and so I grew up in a little city called Des Allemands. And at the time, I'm probably in my 20s. I wasn't dating anybody. I'm still looking for my wife, and she comes up to me one day and she's like, you know, you're never serious, and until you get serious, you're never gonna find a wife. That's what she told me, right?
Wow.
And I started to change who I was because of what this one person told me.
Hmm.
And I stopped joking around so much and I stopped goofing off. And then finally, one day, one of my youth came up to me and just goes, I don't know what happened to you, but we really want the old Bubba back. And it was like, wow, I really changed who I was because
Right.
one person said something,
Right.
right? And it's just the point of be true to who you are. This subject, because once again, I was living it, but the light bulb kind of just went off as to what it was. This subject has become very real to me as of late. And it's a lot of it is whether we like to admit it in the church or not, we play the comparison game. And no matter how many times a lot of churches, including myself, would say, hey, we're not about the numbers. Well, we look at X church down the road and they're running 500 people, and we sit back and we go, well, what are we doing wrong? Well, what are we doing? Well, maybe the Lord gave that church a vision for growth, as far as numerical growth, whereas maybe the Lord gave us a vision for something else. I don't believe that every church is supposed to look the same. Okay. I believe that there are some churches that are meant to be these huge churches because it's a church that draws people in and it gives
Mhm.
more opportunity for those churches to be able to preach the gospel where people may come to know Jesus as Lord and Savior.
Right.
Then I believe that there's also some churches that the Lord is just calling to be that smaller church because they can disciple people.
Right.
I believe there's some churches like our church who and it can change, right? Just because it's who we are now, don't mean that's who we're going to be in 2 years from now. But
Right.
our church has been a place of healing, it's been a place of restoration, and it's been a place that sends people out. So in other words, if we're fulfilling our God-given vision, we're not going to be a huge church because we've had so many people walk in our church with church hurt or just run down, burned out, and they just simply needed a place to heal. And we open our doors, their healing comes, restoration comes. Well, when they're healed and they're restored, then God sends them out. And I would love to be a church that kept more people than we do.
Hmm.
But the fact that people are coming into our church and being healed, and then God uses them, man, how can I complain about that, right?
Right.
And what I
Absolutely.
found myself doing, because like I was saying, is that comparison is kind of what the enemy is here. Is I found myself like, well, what are the other churches doing? What models are they using? Well, how are they keeping people? How are they growing so big? And then what happens is you start following other churches' models instead of what the Lord has given you to do.
Right.
And I think for me, that light bulb kind of went off where because a lot of times people will look at like Stephen Furtick or um, Jeff Abels, to be more local. And when you can't compete, what happens? They want to start running them down. Oh yeah, but them mega churches are this. Them mega church.
Yep.
Well, those mega churches are serving a purpose. That's
Right.
what they're doing. Maybe we're just not called to be that. Okay. So what happens is I can look at Stephen Furtick and go, well, how did they grow so big? But do you want to know why they're successful? Because God gave Stephen Furtick a vision for Highlands Church that was for their church. How does Jeff Abels become so successful? Because God gave Jeff Abels a vision for Crossroads,
Yep.
but that vision is for Crossroads. How does Joe Cormier become so successful at Youngsville? Because God gave him a vision for that church, but their vision is not for my church.
Right.
And it took me a long time to realize that. So the thing I'm big into saying, and my church hears it all the time, is we don't follow other churches' models.
Right. Right.
I had to get there, right? Because we used to try to follow, but I can't be successful with Stephen Furtick's vision.
Right.
I can't be successful with Chris Hodges' vision because that's the vision the Lord gave to them.
Right.
And so I'd always say we don't follow other churches' models. Well, some people took that as a little bit of laziness, like you just don't want to follow the steps, that they're doing.
Right.
Here's what they didn't realize is that when you don't have a model to follow, it's actually more work,
Mm-hmm.
and especially as you're trying to discover that. So I began just kind of preaching in church. This is a long explanation to the question you asked me, then, isn't
Not
it?
at all. Not at all. Run with it.
So run with it, yeah. And what happened was I preached a message in church, and I labeled it at the time as vision, and it was just about how. Oh, excuse me, sorry about that. And what I did was I took a oh, what you call it, those stepping stones, like a concrete stepping stone,
Mm-hmm.
and I put it on a pedestal. And on it with a Sharpie, I had the word Jesus written on it. And I'm like, church, everything that we're going to do at Connect Church, and once again, I'm labeling it as vision, is going to be built on the solid foundation of Jesus Christ. So if that foundation is not there, you cannot build on top of that. And then I took a board, and I wrote on it pastor, and I put it on top of that cement block. And I said, so the pastor now has to be healthy, but it has to be on the foundation of Jesus,
Mm.
right? So now, if the pastor's healthy, then and I put another block, and it's making a triangle, like each board's a little bit shorter. And
Right.
I said, now I need a church board that is healthy. But if the pastor's not healthy and it's not on the foundation of Jesus, then everything underneath it crashes. And we just kept building on top of it. So you have the foundation of Jesus, then you have a healthy pastor, a healthy board, then a healthy staff. Then you can start building your church on that, because everything underneath it has to be able to support what's above it. Okay. So I built that as I'm preaching this message on vision. Then the Lord stirred in my heart, and I'm realizing like man, this is, we're not going to follow other churches' models. We're not going to follow other churches' models. And I'm sitting in my office one day and I'm working, and I'm just trying to figure out, like man, we don't have a model that we follow. And then the Lord, I believe, brought that particular demonstration back to my mind, and I realized literally the Lord gave us a model. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, so I believe the most successful churches are the churches that they just go straight to Jesus with and say, Lord, what is it that you want us specifically to do? It's not that I don't use some of the things that Church of the Highlands do. It's not that I don't use some of the things that Crossroads does. Pastor Joe and Pastor Travis can tell you, I'm on the phone with them all the time. Hey, what do you guys do about this? What do y'all do about that? But one thing we don't do is follow anybody's model 100%. We believe the Lord has given us our own model to follow. That's when
Right.
that authenticity came about. Is that it goes to me as so much more than not wearing skinny jeans and being real to yourself, but seeking the Lord and His plan for your life, His plan for your ministry, His plan for fill in the blank right there.
Right.
I believe God gives vision, is what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the Bible says this, that where there is no vision, the people will perish, right?
Right.
And it's in the book of Proverbs. Well, I've learned this. A proverb, there's biblical proverbs and there's just, worldly proverbs too. So in order for that to be a biblical proverb, you almost want to add the word, you don't add to the Bible, but it mentally you realize that where there is no godly vision, no God-led vision, is where the people perish. So you have to
Mhm.
know where you're leading people,
Right.
but once again, I can't lead them according to how Youngsville leads. I can't lead them according to how Crossroads leads. I can't lead them how Elevation leads.
Right.
So that's kind of where
Absolutely.
that vision just stirred up, and where I got passionate about it, because we are not a church. We're not even a church of 100, right?
Right.
I can look at that and go, man, we are failing, until I look at what God has called us to do. And I realize, no, we're actually accomplishing what
Mm-hmm.
God called us to accomplish. I do believe there's going to be numerical growth that is coming,
Right.
but that's not what our purpose is.
Right. It's true. That's one of the most difficult parts that I've experienced the first year. Because we're a sister church right
Yeah.
now. We're not sovereign yet. We're
Mhm.
not, we're
Mhm.
nowhere, our numbers
Yeah.
are not near that that number to be able to be there. We're growing, we're
Yeah.
getting there, but right now it's just I'm happy being a sovereign church. I'm happy having that oversight and that covering. I'm good. Like
Yeah.
I'm not in a rush to go there. I know it's coming in the future, but I'm not in a rush. But like you said, learning that identity, being authentic, it took me almost the whole first year to figure out who the Lord needed me to be as a pastor for this community. Because
Right.
I came
Right.
in, my first few sermons I preached were just normal, good, like college level preacher man, Bible college seminary level sermons. And they were good and people enjoyed them.
Yeah.
Then I felt the shift and I started declaring the word, and then I got sick. And I was in the hospital and I was down for I didn't preach. I wasn't in church for 2 months, let alone being able to preach or do any of that. I finally got back in and I slowly got back to my feet, literally and figuratively. And now the prayer has been, Lord, we're here now. We've gone through some stuff. We've taken some ground. We can speak from a place of authority now. Send them. And this past weekend, yesterday, we had a service. I had the sermon planned. I had everything. We had communion Sunday. We were, everything was ready. I was ready to go. And then some things start happening and some things start manifesting and people start crying out for Jesus and crying. And it turns into a deliverance and healing service where we preach, we right out of the Bible. Let me declare this over your life. We're laying hands, we're anointing, we're praying, we take communion together in unity to seal it all in. And it was just we just had church. This wasn't your cookie cutter stereotypical church model, but we had church. People met Jesus tonight. That's more than I could say for a lot of previous experiences of just preaching the word and people sitting to listen to me for a good word and for some hope and some advice. We did church. I prayed, Lord, send them. I don't care what condition they're in, send them. And he sent them.
Right.
So it's and I've been working on doing the living free stuff to start some living free programs here. This Wednesday, we're having a meal kitchen because this community is so impoverished. Now that school's out, kids are not eating. So we need to take a step in that direction to help where we can. But now all of this is starting to pop up. It's okay, now I'm learning who we are. We've got to know each other. We've spent time with each other. We've broken bread together. Now they know the congregation knows who I am, and I know who the congregation is just by that one moment. And it's okay, I'm here. Let's do it. This is who we are. Okay. Yeah. But like you said, authenticity, man. If I would have had more authentic leadership as not even a teenager, childhood, whatever, that's past. As a grown man walking through life, we get those mid to early 20s. We're trying to be this person. We're trying to be that person. We're trying to be who we are. And then I'm over here trying to be real and people don't like me because I'm too real. So I'm what do I need to change so people will like me? Nothing.
Right.
Be who God's called you to be. Right. Through sanctification, but man, so
I tell my people all the time, I preach better in a flannel than I do in a shirt, in a suit.
Right.
Because it's who I am, right?
So while we're right here, we're gonna real quick jump and hear a word from one of our sponsors. And hey, Reformation Podcast listeners, we'll be right back. Hey everybody, what's going on? We're just taking a quick little breather, taking a coffee break for a second. Grab yourself a cup of coffee. But speaking of coffee, a couple episodes back, me and Pastor Seth had a conversation about coffee, but I'm here to officially announce the official coffee of the Reformationist podcast. Recently, I got a little package in the mail with some of their blends, some samples to try. Got a few different blends here and little perfectly sized portion packs to brew a drip pot, a regular drip pot. They've got K-cups. They've got multiple blends. They've got everything from these little 2-ounce sizes all the way up to 5-pound bags. You can subscribe and save, and it'll get auto shipped to you, and it'll auto charge from your whatever account you're paying from. But our friends over at Southern Roots Coffee, you can check them out. The link is going to be at the bottom of the screen, www.southernrootscoffee.com. Locally roasted from up in Alexandria, Louisiana. some friends of mine, the Warrens. They're a ministry family. Him and his family pastor a church up in Alexandria, and they roast coffee. So it's roasted right here in small batches in Louisiana, in Alexandria. I've been drinking their coffee longer than I've actually known I've been drinking their coffee, because they used to supply a local coffee shop that me and my wife used to go to regularly. And I fell in love with the coffee. Every time we went, every time I was in town, I was like, I need that coffee. I need that coffee. And then over time, I found out that it was Southern Roots coffee. So, hey, if you're looking for a good, small batch, locally roasted coffee blend, go and check out Southern Roots Coffee. They've got a variety of blends for you. They've got the Lakeview. They've got Casa, Legacy, 120. They've got the Debut blend, which comes in 3 varieties: medium, dark, and dark. They've also got decaf, and like I said, K-Cups. I'm pretty sure you can get any of those blends in a K-Cup. Small orders, small batches, roasted fresh. If you're a business or a church or a coffee shop looking for a supplier, reach out to them. They can probably help you with that too. Hey, but go check them out, www.southernrootscoffee.com. And let's get back to the Reformationist podcast. Hey, thanks for sticking around. I hope you go and check out our sponsor and help support them as they support us through our ministry. Go and give them a click. Go check them out. Engage with everything. Engage with the podcast. Engage with anything they have to offer. But let's get back on this conversation. So the next question, we always want to give advice. We always want to help people. And that's a big part of this podcast, like that's why the idea is talking about things that they don't necessarily teach you in Bible college or seminary. We learn to preach the word. We learn to do all the ministry stuff, but there's things that we have to learn through experience, whether it's life experience or ministry experience. So what are a few things you wish someone, a mentor or an elder or someone, that had been a little bit more advanced in ministry in years when you started, what are some things you wish someone would have told you about this specific topic, about authenticity, years and years ago when you first started?
Yeah. Yeah, man. Listen, one of the greatest things that I got pounded into my head from the very get-go was to have great mentors and leaders in my life. And so this is a little bit difficult question to answer because I feel like I've had a lot of things told to me. As far as what I wish somebody would have told me, I felt like it was all told to me. But yet I don't know that I was ever fully prepared for some of the burden that you carry in ministry. And it's like you have to go through the years in order for it to sink in.
Right.
So it's not necessarily something that I didn't know going into ministry, but if I could really go back and have something stick to my mind that somebody would have told me. So if there's something that I would tell somebody now, is to realize that somebody else's success is not my success. The comparison game is just, and I've mentioned it several times, but the comparison game is so dangerous. So once again, for somebody else, 500 people might mean success. And for me, having somebody who is discipled in the Lord might be more successful.
Right.
So I think it would be just kind of that. Somebody else's success does not define my success.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. And as far as in general, like, some of the pitfalls, we'll say, that pop up in ministry that, that you didn't know about, that were a shock or a surprise, like what's something
Oh, yeah.
major that you might have experienced or seen happen, or just whatever, that if someone would have given you some advice towards that,
Yeah, I think, PJ, one of the things too, that I was never prepared for, um, at 44 years old and 20 years in the ministry, I still don't know if I'm prepared for. Um, Ministry is not a physical job as far as like being outside, being a blue collar worker, but I don't know that anybody understands the burden that a pastor carries. Number one, for his people. Number two, when there's a message on your heart that you're going to be bringing, a sermon that you're going to be preaching, you carry that burden until you release it, right? Um, one of my mentors, Tommy Falk, and I'm sure you know Pastor Tommy.
Oh yeah.
He puts it like this: when you carry the burden of a message, you preach it on Sunday, and then you have another burden on Monday that you're going to carry till you preach again. He says you give birth on Sunday and you're pregnant again on Monday. Is the way that he puts it. Um, but when you're talking about authenticity, man, when you really care about your church, when you really care about the people inside of your church, man, you carry a burden that, um, man, when you can release that burden, don't expect for that burden to bring. You're going to start carrying burdens again
Right.
soon. There's times that the Lord will give me a message, PJ, that uh, will just become a burden that you carry.
Mhm.
But sometimes the Lord gives me that message, but he has me hold on to it for a while, right?
Mhm.
There's
Oh
been
yeah.
times that I've had to hold on to a message for 2 or 3 months, and I just carry that burden. I carry that burden until I'm able to preach that message, get it off of my shoulders, and then sometimes it's 1 day, 2 days later, there's a new burden that's
Yeah.
coming, a new message that's coming.
Yeah.
Same thing if you're pastoring people, if you're really authentic in loving the people in your church, somebody's going through something in your church, you're carrying that burden for them. They get better, you might have a break from that for a day, 2 days, and then somebody else is coming in. And it can be their health, man. It can be their marriage. It can be their finances. And here's the thing: if you're not authentic, you're just out there chasing numbers. I don't really care if you're in financial trouble. I don't really care if your marriage is falling apart. I don't really care if you're healthy or not. But when you're truly authentic and loving your people, and you carry their burdens, or you carry their burdens with you all the time. So I think that's probably one thing that I was not prepared for in ministry is the how much burden you actually carry all the time. And people can be like, man, you had the day off yesterday. Bro, I don't ever have a day off, man, because I'm
Come on.
always carrying
Come
somebody's
on.
burden with me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, it reminds me of, when I embarked on, I pulled it up on my phone. That's what I was digging through. Um, let's see. March 23rd, 2021. I wrote this little thing
Mm.
down. It jumped out to me. Those little passages in the Bible, every once in a while we go past them and there's significance there, but we don't always catch it. So
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
2 Samuel 12, verse 30. At the time
Mm.
I was reading out of the Holman Christian Standard. So this is out of the Holman Christian Standard. Um, he took the crown from the head of their king, and it was placed on David's head. The crown weighed
Mm.
75 pounds of gold, and it had a precious stone in it. In addition, David took away a large quantity of plunder from that city. That account's also mentioned in First Chronicles chapter 20, verse 2. So there's some significance there.
Mm.
Man, I wrote a whole little
Mhm.
devotional thing. I'm not going to dig into it, but you know, that's a 75-pound piece of gold sitting on David's head.
Yeah,
The burden, the burden of being king.
yeah,
Everyone wants to
yeah,
wear the crown. Especially
yeah.
any of you that are out there listening that are young in ministry or just starting out, or you're lay ministers and you want to move up into a pastoral ministry. Pastor Bubba's 100% right. There's a burden that you take on, that you gladly take on because
Mhm.
the Lord's leading you to it.
Yeah,
But unless you're ready for it, unless you're never, there is no ready for it. It happens and boom, that
right.
burden, that mantle is
Mhm.
placed upon you. And that's why when he said what he said earlier with the design, the ministry model, Jesus is the foundation,
Mhm.
and then the pastor on
Yeah,
top of that. Because without Jesus as a foundation, that crown's unwearable, unattainable. Yeah, I think about my
right.
time as a firefighter wearing that black helmet, and that thing was 4, maybe 5 pounds at the most. And after a while, that helmet gets heavy. Anybody that played football,
Yeah,
you wear that helmet all game long. That helmet is heavy. Those shoulder pads are heavy.
yeah,
There's a burden, but that burden also protects us through the Lord. Like the Lord helps
yeah,
us carry it, and there's
absolutely, man.
protection there. There's a reason you wear the helmet. There's a
Yeah.
reason you wear the crown, and it's for protection. And there's a reason in Revelation when the elders cast their crowns before the Lamb, because it's too much
Mhm.
for them to bear.
Yep.
The burden is too much.
Yeah.
We can only bear it with Jesus. But I completely agree,
Yeah.
man. If you're not prepared for it, my wife has said of everything we've gone through, this is the hardest thing she's ever done in
Oh
life.
man,
Like,
I've been hit with electricity. I've been burned on my arms, and this is the hardest job I've ever had.
yeah,
And it's a lot. It's crazy. You're always around people, but it's also the loneliest position I've ever had too.
yep,
I
yep,
have friends, I have people around me all the time, but
right,
there's so much that you can't share with other people,
yep,
right? It's
yep,
a lonely position. You mentioned the model again that we were building, and once again, I just love it so much. Jesus is the foundation. Like when I built it on stage, I made sure that that was a concrete stone, and
right,
then everything we put on it was wood because I'm just trying to show the church, that that's a foundation. Jesus is the foundation that we build on, but everything above it has to be supported by what's below it, right?
absolutely,
So when people hear me talk about, hey, we're not out there trying to be a church of 500, or we're not, don't measure our success by numbers. It's not that we don't want to grow. It's not that we don't think we can ever be a big church, but our model is that we have to have healthy stuff underneath that to be able. In other words, if we're going to get big, we better have something to support it, or we're just going to be that. We're just going to be big,
absolutely,
right? When we first moved here, the church was not in very good shape, and I would literally cringe when we had visitors. Like when we first moved here, PJ, I did not want visitors
yeah,
because the church wasn't healthy, right? So until that foundation of church was healthy, which goes above staff and above board and above pastor and above foundation of Jesus on the model. So until those things were healthy underneath, and until our church was healthy, outreach wasn't even on the menu.
right.
Like literally, I would cringe when people would walk in for the first time, like, "Oh man, I'm not ready to have new people here yet." There was some services, and it sounds funny, but there were some services where we had new people, and they would walk out, and I'm going, "Yeah, they're never coming back." And it's just kind of
Oh,
that example of yes, we can grow. I just
right,
need everything underneath it to be healthy because
right,
I'm not into just having numbers. Like if I can't disciple you, I don't really want you here because it's just somebody that we're gonna lose,
right.
you know? Yeah. Mhm.
Understandable, understandable. It's true. Like, we've had few new people come in, and they'd come in one Sunday, and then we'd never see them again. Also, but
Yeah. Yeah.
working things out. We're working a lot of things out, and last night was one of those nights where, with everything, like explained earlier, everything that happened,
Mhm.
we had two
Yeah.
brand new people there. One of them
Mm.
was connected through someone else,
Mhm.
and man, they were engaging in prayer. They were into it. They were like, okay, and oh, I'll definitely be back. Yeah, this feels like a
Yeah.
church I can come to. I'm like, okay, cool. And then the
Yeah,
other
yeah.
person was my kid's bus driver, and it was like, you're almost like, oh boy,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, and that brings up a great point, PJ, too, is that one of the things, as the church got healthier and we wanted to start getting some people in here, I prayed. One of my prayers was, Lord, give me favor in our community.
mhm,
What that did not mean, or what the Lord did not do, was just start bringing people to our church. Is
right,
that He allowed us to get more involved in the community,
yep,
right?
yep,
One of the greatest things was my kids were in theater, and then I got involved with them as well, and that has opened up more doors than anything else
yeah,
as far as building favor in our community, and it's also brought in a few guests into our church as well.
yeah,
So, I think that'd be the other thing is don't be so focused on the church that you lose sight of your community as
right,
well.
right. Yeah, we did National Day of Prayer. Instead of having a thing at the little park right across the street here, like
Yeah, yeah.
center of town, we went to the school. I contacted
Oh,
the
yeah.
principal, and this school out here, it's elementary all the way through to high school. It's one school for
Mhm.
all ages. Um, they still pray in the morning. They, before school starts, they say the Pledge
That's
of
awesome.
Allegiance.
Yeah.
Teachers play worship music in the classrooms. Like,
Oh, wow.
they're not ashamed, and different
Mhm.
denominations and different faiths, all Jesus, different, Catholics, Baptists, all kinds, Pentecostals, all kinds.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
they allowed us to come to the school and walk through the halls and pray over the school. and teachers
Mm.
joined us and students joined us. It was like, that was more meaningful than anything we would do at the
Yeah.
park. Because like you said, reaching out to the
Yeah.
community. And then like 2 weeks later, we were bringing a couple trays of food for Teacher Appreciation Week for the teachers. And they
Mhm.
all reached out
Yeah.
to us and like, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I'm like, that's what we're here
Right.
for. That's what the church is supposed to be here for, to reach out, love each
Exactly.
other, bring each
Exactly.
other to Jesus, not all this other shows and programs that
Mhm.
we do. And
Yeah.
what got me
I
going on
tell
that is I had an older gentleman cut the grass one time at the church, and I went over to pay them for cutting the grass, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I remember when the Pentecostal movements were, the Louisiana, South Louisiana here. Our parents would go on a Sunday evening just to get a show." And I'm like, "Oh God, forgive us." Lord,
yeah,
forgive us for
exactly.
being an entertainment for people and not
Exactly.
spreading the love of Jesus to people.
Exactly.
Like,
Yes.
oh, it hit me
Exactly.
hard, man. Like I was
Exactly.
sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
Like,
Mm.
authenticity. Are we putting on a show
Yep.
or are we being real for Jesus?
Exactly. Exactly.
All
Exactly,
right.
man. Yeah, yeah, one of the things too is I always tell my church this, is that I'm not here to promote our church, I'm here to promote Jesus. And we've
Absolutely.
done some of those things as well. We don't have a ton of money here at the church, but I'll do
Yeah.
things like just go pick up Raising Cane's and bring it to a barber shop. You
Yeah.
know, I've done that before. And I'm telling you, when we first moved here, we would say our church name, which is Connect Church. A lot of people go, "Oh, I never heard of that." Well, we don't have a ton of people here, but people know who we are at this point.
Yeah.
And and once again, everything I've said today is not because we don't want more people here. It's not an excuse for not being a big church. I just feel like we've kind of gone through a process of how God has called us. I
Yeah.
believe our growth is coming, but it's been a 4-year process.
Right.
And I believe that now when people walk in, they're walking into something healthier than they've ever walked into.
Yeah.
It's just not, we just didn't rush that process that God is bringing us to.
Absolutely. All right. Next part of the conversation. So in a few words,
Mm.
tell yourself, a young 18 to 20-year-old,
Mhm.
not pastor Bubba, but just Bubba, like those first steps going into
Yeah.
that pastor role, um,
Yeah.
tell
Yep.
your young self something significant about ministry that's going to carry you from that young man to who you are today.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. I have seen so many strong Christians in ministry fall away from the Lord. And if there is one thing that I can say that will give you longevity in ministry, is to be sure to keep your priorities healthy. Priorities meaning uh, God first in your life. I know when I was a young minister, PJ, maybe you can relate to this, is that I was mistaken ministry with my relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was spending time preparing for ministry, I wasn't spending much time on my personal relationship with God.
Right.
Well, when Jesus was trying, or when they were trying to trip up Jesus, they said, "What is the greatest command in the law?" They thought they were going to trip him up with a question, and he says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind." Well, everybody knows the second part of that verse when Jesus says, "And love your neighbor." Here's what people don't get, is that Jesus answered that part of the question without being asked. So they said, "What is the greatest commandment?" Jesus tells them, and then without being asked, he goes, "Oh, and by the way, here's the second greatest part of it: love your neighbor as yourself." But he did call them first and second. In other words,
Right.
I have to love God first before I love
Mm-hmm.
people. But there's also an even healthier priority there. I love God, but then I better make my family a priority as well.
Yeah.
Because if I neglect my family and my children fall away from the Lord, or my family falls apart, my ministry's not worth it. My ministry's not worth it. And
Absolutely.
I've got to be able to have God first in my life, my family second in my life. If you're not vocational ministry, make your occupation third, because you have to provide for that family that you
Yeah.
love. But ministry's like fourth on that list. I've had to learn this over the years. That doesn't mean you're neglecting your ministry.
Right.
That allows you to minister from a healthier place.
Come on. Come on.
That's the one thing that I would definitely tell a new to Bubba, a new to Bubba minister. I think I was very fortunate when I started ministry to have a wife who loved ministry as much as I did,
Yeah.
because we put ministry above our family. Fortunately, it was something we did together. So in a sense, I guess it was healthy for us. But man, if either one of us would have put that ministry before our relationship and had it neglect our relationship, man, if me and my wife wasn't together today, that season would not have been worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. This is, I want to say, the third or fourth time that this same exact what I'm about to say has come up. Like we look at the Bible and we look at Genesis, and the family was the first
Yeah.
institution that God established. He established his relationship with Adam,
Right.
and then once that relationship with Adam was established, then he established the family, Adam, Eve, and then their children. Before there was a
Correct.
government, before there was a
Correct.
church, before there was anything else, it was Adam and God, and
Exactly.
then Adam and his family. Like I always say
Exactly.
it, I've talked with a few friends of mine in ministry. Um, and it's like anything, like as pastors, like as a campus pastor, like that church, I'm the father of the house. So really it's my house. I'm responsible for the house. I set the tone, I set the authority. And if Jesus isn't the
Yep.
center, then I'm off. But at the same time, that means I have two
Exactly.
houses. I have this house that I'm in right now, my house.
hmm
Luckily my office is at
hmm
home. But
Yep.
I've always said, me and my wife have the agreement, if it doesn't start in this house, I'm not taking it out
hmm
there. If we don't have the agreement and
Exactly.
and the peace about it in our own house with me, my wife, and my children, it never
Yep.
leaves these four walls.
Yep.
We have peace. Like even I
Exactly.
write my sermon and I'm done and I read it with her. Something as simple as my Sunday sermon. I go over it with her and me and her
hmm
pray about it and she listens to me. And of course I don't go, the Holy Spirit leads. So like I might have something written down and then go down a Holy Spirit rabbit
hmm
hole and then come back to it. But like, you know, just the base of it, the base of the sermon. I go over it with her, the scriptures, the point I'm trying to get at. And if there's no peace about it between the two of us, then I go back into the office and work some more until we both are okay.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
if it's not agreed in this house, then we don't take it outside of this house. And that's everything in ministry, you know? Like
Right.
you said, this
Amen.
job is the
Yep.
loneliest job we have, right? But because we're a
Right.
family, we're a couple in
hmm
ministry. My wife is my best friend. My wife is the one who is there
Yeah.
for me when I need someone. And there's no one I really don't feel, like late at night, in the middle of the night, if it's not an emergency and I wake up and something's going on and my heart's on something, my mind's on something that's burdening me. I know I can call somebody. I know I have people I can call, but at 2 o'clock in the morning, if it's not an
Yeah.
emergency, I'm probably not going to. But my wife is right
Yeah.
there and she's like, what's the matter? Let's pray. Let's talk.
Mhm.
And it's like,
Right.
then I feel at peace and we work through it.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
like if that's not straight, you said it. You said it perfectly. It's not healthy.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, you have to be able to minister from a healthy place, or
Yeah.
or else you're putting ministry even above God.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I've been there as well.
Right.
Mhm.
So before we wrap up, any final thoughts? Anything you want to
Yes. Yes, don't wear skinny jeans
don't
is what the whole purpose of this entire podcast was. No, it's no, it's seriously everything that we've just been saying, Pastor. It's be authentic, and I struggled with the wording of it, like be authentic to yourself, be authentic to Jesus, and it works hand in hand
Yeah.
because I believe that God made each and every one of us the way that we are. He's given us our personalities. He's given us so much of what we display every day. So it's be authentic to who you are because God created you to be who you are.
Yeah.
And I remember in youth ministry, every time a fad would come out, the kids would do it. Right. There was the ones where they made their lips big. You remember all the different things that came out. And the Facebook memories pop up. And I remember putting something on Facebook that popped up and I was like, oh, that was so good. And it was be who God created you to be because that's who he created you to be.
Right.
And that's what authenticity is all about. Don't try to be something that you're not. Be who God created you to be. Now, of course, before we knew Jesus, right, we think we know who we were, right?
Yeah.
But once we come to know Jesus, he makes us new, and that's when you really start to walk in your God-given identity, your God-given attitude, your God-given fill in the blank right there
Yep.
with whatever God has given you. And we're not perfect, and I get that, and we're still growing every single day and becoming more and more like Christ. But that personality that God has given you, whether it's silly or serious,
Yeah.
be that person. The likes that you have, whether it's a flannel or a t-shirt or a dress shirt, be who God created you to be. And then when God gives you that vision, follow the vision. Don't
Right.
don't follow what God has given somebody else. You can be successful if you're defining success the wrong way, but know what God has called you to do, and then let Him lead you through that. And don't rush it. Like that's the thing for me. Don't rush it. I'm
Yeah.
telling 4 years into this is when we're trying to build the church now, because God gave me a vision of bringing health here before we bring people here. So that would be my final thoughts. Be
Awesome.
authentic to who God created you to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We need authenticity, not only in the
Yes.
church, but in this world. Um,
Yes.
Hey, I want to thank you for your time today. Thanks for having a cup of coffee with me. Hey, for those of
Yeah.
you out there that are listening, don't forget to go out and check out www.southernrootscoffee.com. A lot of great roasts and blends out there. So far, our favorite in the house has been the debut blend. There's a medium, there's a dark, there's a medium dark. It's a Brazilian coffee. I've always loved Brazilian coffee. It's one of my favorites.
Good.
My wife likes it. Go check them out. Go buy some coffee. Go support a good friend of mine and his ministry and his family. Best coffee we've had in a long time, and the price point is absolutely excellent. If you're buying a little bit higher level coffee at the grocery store, like the Community or the Starbucks or some of Dunkin', some of those, spend a couple extra dollars and get locally roasted coffee from our friend here. Thanks for checking
Yeah.
out. Make sure you like, you subscribe, you share, you comment, leave some words of encouragement. If you have any prayer requests, put them on the comment section down there below the video. You see the comment section. You got a prayer request, put it there. We'll pray for you. I'll reach out to you personally. And thanks for checking us out. I pray you have a blessed rest of your day, and come on back next time. We'll see you later. Bye.
We appreciate you checking us out. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Stay tuned for more content, and don't hesitate to comment or leave any questions. We will see you next time on the Reformationist Podcast. Take care, and God bless.